This presentation is entitled City Directories May Resolve Family History Conundrums. Our presenter is Marilyn Thomsen. She is an accomplished genealogist and has earned a lot of awards and has a great history in doing genealogy. And we appreciate her preparation and willingness to share her knowledge and experience today. I'll now turn the time over to Marilyn Thomsen.
Thank you very much. I am so grateful to be able to do this class. I have taught this class at BYU several other times. I have to tell you, I graduated in family history, and when I chose the area I was going to major in, it was Southern research. And the reason for Southern research is it is called the armpit of the United States research, just because it is just so difficult. And in the South, you have to learn how to use many, many records to be able to resolve your problems. And so city directories are critical. And I often see people who haven't really looked into city directories, don't know how to use them. And so that's one reason I really love teaching this class. So first, I will show a few ordinary conundrums that I have run into with just even this researching just the first part of this year. And then we're going to talk about how to find city directories and what's the difference between the sites that carry city directories. And then I want to just conclude with a fun city directory that was the aha, this is the record that resolved that conundrum. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, this screen has my email address on it. It's just marilynthomsen@gmail.com. I'm going to send a copy of the handout to the Family History Center there at BYU, and they'll be able to share it. But if you want to email me, I would be happy to send that to you directly. So this is what we're going to do. The ordinary conundrums that are just, one research, and then how to find them, and then the example. So we're going to start out with this conundrum. It starts with an obituary. And of course, we all love all the information in obituary. And this was Robert Fulton Gray's obituary. And he had two families with two wives, and we didn't realize that until part of the way through the researching. And it says here that he is the father of Marion Miller in 1819 South Sutter Street. And so immediately my mind says, aha, city directories, yay. This is 1932. And the first thing that this will help us to do is to find out her husband. And all of you have found a list of wives, or a list of even husbands. It'll say Mrs. George something or other, and you're going, but wait, which daughter is that married? And city directories are just so helpful to put these these marriages together. This one was especially sweet because it had an address. This is in Stockton, California. So, of course, when I was doing this, I went into Ancestry.com. They have a collection of city directories, California, Stockton, and the obituary was 1932. The first one they had was 1935. So then we found her in the Millers. So let me explain one conundrum we often have is the commonality of names. And so right here, we have Miller. Miller is as common a name as Smith or Jones. In fact, there are some references I've read that there are more Millers than Smith or Jones, because there were Millers and Smiths and there were Joneses. So, but anyway, Joseph is here. And so again, there are a lot of common names. And so how do you separate people? Well, that's one of the wonderful things about city directories is it just gives you one more handle to be able to separate people. And those handles can be occupations, it can be an address. And so here we have a Marion, and we have the same address, and it says her husband is a woodworker. So how helpful to have those. Again, I mentioned how city directories help you to put wives with husbands, and we'll talk about this a little later, but this example below is a Kath with a widow who is the widow of Henry. So when this happens, sometimes city directories will only put that in the year after the death. Some city directories actually will have a section that lists the mortalities and the births. And so when you're using a city directory, use the whole thing. So, of course, then we use our census, and that's the next thing is you're always using city directories in conjunction with other records at the same time. And so here we have the whole family. We have Joseph and Marion and Donald and Jean, and it shows that the last child's born in California. And then there's the occupation, and he is a carpenter helper. And so do you remember that prior one? It said he was a woodworker. So that is really so helpful to be able to have that occupation, to know that we had the right Joseph. There are forms. When you are doing city directories, you want to collect all of the information from a series of city directories, because each directory can have additional information that it will add to this search of a series of directories. And so this is a sample form that you could just make up as a table. But is what this form does is it helps me to remember to collect all of these pieces of information, which directory. Sometimes they'll have a series of directories that were created from one publisher. And then you'll find out that there was another publisher of another directory at the same time. So that's why that starts out there first. So you can do a ditto mark if you're doing the same one. The street name, the street number, the house numbers may change, the occupant's name, and this occupation. And then just put some little notes in there. So I want to just demonstrate in Ancestry.com how to move through what's called the breadcrumb header. So when you go into Ancestry's US City Directories, you'll see, first of all, you can pick a state. And then Stockton's actually a city. So in California, then you will go to the county or city, and you can pick a city or a county. And then next, you're going to pick the year. And this is really helpful to be able to see how many years they have and what they show you. And here you can see there were many city directories before the one that I happened to find. So I can go forward and I can go backwards. I could go forward to the year that they got married and find out family, for example, or who's living in the same place by using the thing. And then this last one shows that there was only one directory that Ancestry has microfilmed or digitized in their collection. But sometimes by clicking there, I'll see that there are additional directories that are in the collection. Okay. So there are more than one printer, I guess, of directories. I just want to show you, this is the tip on occupations. So I want to demonstrate this. So you saw that it said that he was a woodworker, but when we went back one year from 1935, it has Joe's, and which is, if you go to the abbreviation, it says that's an abbreviation for Joseph. And then it says Marion. And sometimes these directories will standardize a name, and they'll maybe say that also in the foreword. And so especially surnames, they may decide that they're not going to use the spelling variation you have. And then it says fireman. Now, see, I had to go through several city directories to find the woodworking. And so in this one, he's a fireman. In the next one, he's a woodworker. Okay. And so it's important with these occupations to follow up on the occupations to find out. Here it says he's a woodworker with Ole Martinson. So Ole Martinson is an important person to Joseph. If I was doing deeper research, I'd find out who Ole is, and I'd go in the city directory and find where Ole lived, and I'd find who Ole's business is and things like that. So take the time to find out who these people are. It could be that Ole Martinson is the uncle, and that gives you a maiden name, or, just different things like that. And then next we have, he's a fireman again. So this is 1945. So starts out as a fireman, he becomes a woodworker. And then when they moved into another city, he returned to the occupation of fireman. Okay. So another thing that you need to understand with directories is that there are separations that appear. So some years, if you find that a husband and wife are at different addresses, that may be that the marriage is struggling, okay? And the second thing city directories do is if you find a man at the same address, but he has another wife's name showing up, then that's the time to check for a death and also to check for this marriage record. So always check a few years after for the people. It's like censuses, if you miss them in one census, they may have been missed. But go ahead and keep finding all the censuses possible. And in city directories, people do get missed. The canvassers may miss them, or they just may be out of town. The reason that Joseph wasn't in the 1945 directory, but his wife was without him, was because he joined the military. Also, look at the period of time, talking why perhaps that person may not be in the directory. So this is an example. So here we have Joseph is going down here, and then it has Mrs. Marion, okay? And this is in 1968. And then it has her occupation and where she works in Alexandria. And above, we have a Joseph C. This Joseph C. is her son, and this is his wife, and he's working at the state hospital. So again, all of these clues in 1968. Look how recent that is, to be able to give me those kind of information and to be able to find if I have the right people. Marion went on to remarry, and the reason that I knew that I had found her and that remarriage was her is the city directory showed she still had the same occupation, even though she had a new surname. So when you're using city directories, one of the first things you want to do is you want to go and look in the general index at the very front of that directory. And these will be the same for a series, and then they'll change. And so just look these over in the directory. So this is the deeper research that really makes the difference between really understanding and really getting all the information that you can squeeze dry out of that and resolve a conundrum that you may not understand, because I remember Brother Ditmore once said the more information you have, the better decisions you are able to make. So one of the first things that I look for in a city directory and the index is the abbreviations, and we'll talk about that. Also, there's histories of the city where you are, and they'll mention minorities. They'll mention why the city was built, the changes in the city, what the occupations or the things that have occurred. Streets will be renumbered, and there will be a section that tells you what street addresses were changed or renumbered, or if an area has been incorporated. Also, you'll have maps. Maps are incredibly helpful for finding cemeteries nearby, for finding churches nearby. There'll be rural areas that later will be incorporated, but they'll name the people who are property owners in these rural areas. And I have solved several conundrums by going into those rural areas. It wasn't the city, but it was the rural area, and seeing that those people were already there before the city was even created. In some city directories, they'll have what's called a postal route. And postal routes help you to pull families together that are living near each other, especially, for example, in this case, a Miller. To be able to see them together, that helps me see who the family is. And then, as I've said, businesses and churches and cemetery listings is what will happen is, for example, I'll give an example later, but quickly, we had the son, but we are wondering, what church, because in his obituary, he said, I had an epiphany in my life and became converted at this period of time. So we went to the city directory. We looked at where they were living. We then looked at the church that was nearby. We called up that church that existed still, and they said, oh, yes, we do have him listed here. Oh, yes, we do have the family. Oh, yes, we have a listing of a child that died while they were members of this church. So those are just the kind of clues that you're going to get from a city directory. So I want to have you look at these abbreviations. These are actually for two different sections. The one section is an explanation of the abbreviations of occupations. Okay. And then the other abbreviation is just general abbreviations that you're going to be running into. And so, for example, there's an H and an R, and those are some that people will misinterpret. And so if you go into the directory, you'll see, are they an owner? Some of them will say they own, and then you want to look for land. But if it says R, some people misinterpret that as saying they're renters, but this one says they're just residents. So they actually could be, the father could own it, and they're just a resident with the father. So that's important. And then, for example, H, what does H stand for? And in this one, H stands for householder. And what does a householder mean? A householder could mean that they are an owner. And so you kind of need to check that out. So an H, instead of saying O, it's a householder. They hold the house. R, it says a roomer or resides there instead of, and then S, that's another one. It means south, and you may misinterpret that. Down here, occupations, it's important to get the occupations right, okay? And that gives you another handle to who they are. Had a delightful research that I did. The person worked in a store selling candy, and it was just a general store, but I was able to watch as he moved from a bagman to a helper to a teller that took the money to the bank, type thing. And so in printing, were they a press feeder or they a bookbinder? So those occupations can give you a whole, we call it a handle, but a whole different picture of this person, who they are, what they do at different ages. And then if they regress, perhaps they had a problem with alcohol. Perhaps they got fired. And so one individual, I would see that he didn't have an occupation. Then he'd have an occupation. He would start to move up. And then all at once he was at a different firm, and he was starting at the bottom again. So that can put something into the story that you have. Okay, so these are, again, as I said, abbreviations. It shows these are the occupations. And then this is another abbreviation for firms. So as you saw, look at all of those numbers, but then if you go to the abbreviation, then you'll find out who the company is. And then if you look up that company, it'll give you the address for the company. And you may even have some records if they work there that they may be able to look for, okay? Find other records such as churches and cemeteries. Another one is social organizations. So we know about the Masons, for example. Had one ancestor, I found the address of the Masons that was in one of these directories, then looked them up. The one that was nearest him, it was a huge city, Augusta, Georgia, and was able to narrow it down to which of the Mason groups that he attended. And I was able to get a beautiful obituary that they had written about him. To locate the church or cemetery for an ancestor, use directories to find addresses of churches near your ancestor's residence. I have to tell you, church records have cracked open so many cases that people have been working so hard to figure it out, and just one phone call to a church that was near them just gave me all the pieces that I needed. Marriage certificates can name a minister that performed a marriage. And so if you go to the city directory and you find him listed, you will find the name of his church, and then they would be able to put you in contact with the archive. One of the problems you're going to run into for cemeteries is who has the records for the cemetery. So with Google, of course, will help you find the Chamber of Commerce. I call a local library and say, who do you recommend I would call? And can you give me that phone number? That's a good way to do it. Local libraries are just gems to help you out. Genealogical societies and historical societies will track who bought the records of, let's say, the funeral home that went out of business, that was bought out or merged with somebody else. They can really be a huge help. Okay, postal routes. I mentioned that once before. This is the 1931 postal routes. This is for our miller. And so I kind of wanted to show you what happens. Okay. If you'll see these numbers at the end of the postal routes, then these are the people who are millers that are living in the same area of Marion. And so Marion E, that is at postal box number 90 or rural route 90, is a different miller than these other millers that are in different places. And so those is what that does, is it gives you other individuals. So if there are brothers that are not named in censuses, for example, this would give you other individuals that you can check into and look up obituaries or other records and be able to see if they are part of the family. Okay, I wanted to show you the series for Marion E. The first one, 1925, she's working at Al Drug. And then we go down to when Joseph, this one, 1925, he's there. Okay. And then in the last one in 1974, then she is working at this address. So these are the type of occupations that you're going to see, and you work through it and put it together. So directories lead to other records. Whether a person owned, rents, or is a boarder or is a business owner. And city directories are incredibly helpful to be able to find businesses and to see when businesses change hands. And especially for men, if you're doing a history and you're looking about at them, this can help you to put the things together. Did they get bought out? Who are they there? Schools. I've seen city directories that list the teachers in the school and list the students in the teacher's class. It's amazing. Land records, if you see that they're owning land, you go and find those land records or find in the newspaper that things have happened as a result. Now, when Marion disappeared from a directory, see here she is up here. There's her second marriage. There's Marion. And then he is there without her. I didn't find her in another listing or separate address. So, but immediately what I will do at that point is I will start looking for her obituary. Often with our OCR recognition, you'll look for an obituary. It doesn't come up. Could be Comer was digitized as Domer or something like that, and I didn't figure it out, some part of it, and it just didn't bring it up. But if you have a year and you can narrow it down, sometimes then that will bring a narrower search will bring up a better results than to not have that. So here they are. This is another important one that just popped up because it lists her as a wife at this address, but then it lists her again as a stenographer working at the Central Labor Council at another address. Okay, so the occupation may be listed separately. There are not two Marions, even though it's spelled differently. they are the same person, but it's just been listed differently. So one of the things that happens, and we're back here with this obituary, is I'm wondering, how did they meet? They were married in Denver, Colorado. And so I went in to look for a city directory and to find how they met. Sometimes you're able to see, she's a waitress at the Grant. You start putting an address together and you find that he was working across the street. There is a Joseph Miller who is a waiter also. W. Miller, who was a waiter. Maybe they were working at the same place. Maybe she was the stenographer at the place they met. But it helps you to be able to put these two people together. Often when I have an obituary, say, that has a name of him, then I will go and I will find him in the city directory and then see what she is doing at the same time. Where is she living and what is she doing? And this can help you to figure out how they met and actually, maybe bring it backwards. Okay, so here's number 9 out of the 10 tips. Introductions of histories are often in the foreword. So let me explain what city directories, one of the purposes of them is they're called boosters. Okay. And so just like you go online and you're looking at a city to see if you want to move there, is this a nice place to live? That's what city directories did. They promoted the city and the area and what's wonderful and what's good about this place and that. And so they will have at the front part of many directories these little brief summaries of the area. So this is Stockton. And it says, the city of Stockton was originated in the gold rush and mining area, but the port really didn't open until 1933. And it's where the railroad terminal ended and was starting to bring all of the goods to this port. And so then that's when the city really was founded. So that was interesting to me. And all of the goods that they brought, and I could see what kind of a city is this? It's different than a Midwest city. And so again, that's another little handle, another little piece of information to put down for your ancestor. So these are some assumptions that I wanted to just kind of warn you about. Minorities are often listed separate, okay? With the Jim Crow feeling in that these minorities weren't canvassed really well, number one, but then two, there'll be a whole section. So that looking at that index at the very beginning, that's one of the first things I look for. Other times you'll see COLD, for example, behind a person's name, and it means they're colored. And that's another handle. And so, for example, in one of the cases I had, there was a colored who had the same name as the person I was researching, but it allowed me to be able to quickly eliminate that common name in the city directory and not have to go any further. Okay, another assumption you shouldn't make is that others at your ancestors' address are family. They may be boarders, and we're so grateful for the census records that just says, rooming or boarders or something like that. So even though they are important people for us to perhaps keep in our fan club list, we also have to be careful to not, I have actually gone in and seen in family search that somebody's added them to the family. And so be careful, okay? But they could be family. They also could be grandchildren. They could be the children of a daughter who has died or something. So you do have to just check out the other individuals living in the same residence. And so use city directories to add to your fan club. So now we're going to talk about where we're going to find these city directories, okay? One of the first places that I go when I'm researching a new record type is I dearly love the wiki at familysearch.org. And they try to maintain these links. They try to keep updating the information. And so This is what you'll see if you go into City Directories at the Family Search Wiki. And they're explaining what they have and where they're at. So we're going to start out at the first. They say City Directories start out about 1749 and go through 1940. And then they have a little thing on how to use their collection, and they have indexes and images. Then we have City Directories. It's a collection at Ancestry. And then they say, those are free at Family Search Centers. And you'll notice the dates. Okay. So the 1749 are the very first early, 49, the US wasn't created until 1776. So those are very early. You'll find City Directories in England. And what they are is just to help people to know the name of the shoemaker, or to know the name of, the next door neighbor. What was their name? And so they didn't have phones, but they had listings of people. So 1822, that is when our censuses are just naming people. Okay. So these city directories can be really helpful for you to sort out people who are similar, have similar names, to see when they stay in a thing. And so that's important to know, that they existed before the 1850 census. And then you'll see it says Ancestry goes clear to 1995. And we'll talk a little bit more about this collection at Ancestry. But then the next one says Public Record Index. Okay. And so this is, 1940 is when Family Search ends. 1950 through 1993 is phone books. And this is a resource I use a lot. Calling people, finding out people's names, finding husbands and wives. These phone books can be really helpful. It's one of Ancestry's most used record collections, and it's actually one of their largest record collection. But also, these are phone books, and they are not city directories. And so it's a different collection. Okay, even though they've rolled it into the other collection, it is different. And then Ancestry owns Fold 3. And Fold 3, at the bottom, the third one down there, it says that they have indexes and images. And they do, but many, I can't say, because I don't work at Ancestry, in that I would go to Ancestry before I go to Fold 3, just because it's difficult to use their index. And I'll show you that. Okay, then the next one we have is, so we talked MyHeritage. MyHeritage has indexes and images, and we'll talk about that later. And you may not have used MyHeritage's indexes, but I'll show you why that can be valuable to use. And then the last two are what are called the directories of directories. Okay. Now I have a little purple, sign there, because I have found that the first one, the United States Online Historical Directories, was at one time a very valuable website to use. At 2013, it was one of the nominated the top sites. But when Google changed its platform, they needed to redo the entire web page, and I have not. Maybe somebody else will. You'll find a way around my problems, but I have not been able to get this link work, and I have sent a note to Family Search about that. The last one, the US City Directories, also has a few little bugs, but it is valuable, and we'll talk about those. Okay. So directories at Family Search. This is their little blip about their directories. And so this first part I want you to see. The pre-1960 city directories were on microfiche. And so those were quickly digitized as a collection. And then the directories after 1860 were on microfilms. So there were 366 cities that were microfilmed by the Genealogical Society. And so what's happened is other websites such as Ancestry and MyHeritage have taken those microfiche and those microfilm and digitized them. and made indexes for them that are searchable online. And then they've done image corrections to help search OCR and all of that. And so Family Search owned originally these films, but now because they have joined with these other organizations, sometimes those images will actually be on the other websites, and you can find them at family history centers or that. But just so you kind of understand what's going on with city directories. Then some of these other commercial websites have gone on to microfilm the many directories that were not microfilmed. And they have started additional microfilms and microcollections that won't be in these microfilms, okay? Just so that you're aware of that. This also shows you how to find directories. There are little directories in localities, just odd little directories that you can find in a locality. And so just look for them, okay? They will be there. So this is the Family Search Wiki. If you were to have scrolled down, it will show you every single state has a page about directories. And these are helpful pages. And I'm going to show you the one for Missouri. So is what this says at the St. Louis Public Library. They own these directories, these cities, and you can request copies. They have the email there that you can contact. So if you are not locating, let's say, one of these cities in the microfilms that are online, this is a second way to be able to obtain directories. And then, of course, they mentioned that Fold 3 has the collections and Ancestry has the collections, and those probably will be the same, but check it, because it says there's a St. Louis City Directory and a Kansas City Directory. So that is helpful. They also will have the fish and the film numbers that are there at the top that show you. And then at the very bottom, let me show you, it says there's Google Books has a directory. And this won't be part of those microfilm collections. It will be a whole separate book. And so this is a Google book, okay? And so I'm just showing you, because of that little link at Family Search, then I was able to go in and look up a book in that area and see that there's Joseph in a book by a different printer than the one I used. So at the bottom of this, I told you there was the directory of directories, and this called City Directories. And this is what the link looks like. And this is actually the best way to use this site. I have found if I have tried to type in the City Directory link or website, that there's some little block that doesn't get me to this map. And the map is the best way to look. And so once you get to this page, you'll click on the state. Well, you'll click on the cities that it shows that are available in the directories. This again is the library catalog. If you were to search the library catalog, you can see the San Joaquin Genealogical Society has a book just about the city directories that are available and where to find them. And when you click on these, some of them are books that, even though they have been digitized, they are only available for viewing at the Family History Library in Salt Lake. Sometimes they will be viewable at a family history center. Okay, so I'm going to show you this one. This is the Pacific Telephone and Telegraph Company that has a directory. And that's not the publisher that you'll find on Ancestry. And so when you click on it, it says, oh, you want to view a digital version of that, click here. And then this one little directory comes up. And then you can go ahead and you can open it up and you can look inside and find your people in it. Now, I want to talk to you about Fold 3's directories that mentioned that Fold 3 has the directories. Fold 3 has a very difficult search engine, but we now know that we want the city directories of Kansas City. And so we'll go ahead and do a search. And this one, it says, is what Family Search told us. They had an incomplete run. When you go into fold 3, they say, oh, we've got them all. But if you start looking deeper, it will say they've got 1865, 1867, and then 1873. And so that was helpful to be able to see that on Family Search that they were missing some. Fold 3, you can search the index for free. Okay, but to view the document, it requires a subscription. So this is what would happen if you hadn't signed in or don't have a subscription. You won't be able to see everything, but you can see the people's names. And then if you were at a family history center or if you have a subscription, this is what you will see, is they will be highlighted. You'll be able to see the street, you'll be able to see the year, and you would be able to look at the items. Okay. Fold 3 also has at the bottom, they have a little thing that's called a waffle view. And that's how you're going to move through the directories, is you're going to, you click up there at the top and it'll move to the next year, the year before or the year after. And that's how you get around in fold 3. When you click on that, then it shows you all of the years so that you can move through the directories and search for people. All of these didn't come up on a search for a name. And then it shows you how they can sort and where you want to be. This is how you would search city directories at MyHeritage. And I don't know if as many people are familiar with this, so I wanted to show you the advantage of MyHeritage. So with MyHeritage, this is kind of the front screen. It has MyHeritage across the top, and it has a home, and family tree and discoveries at the top. Okay, but where you really want to click is research, and you're going to search on collection catalog. At least that's what I do. And it's going to take you to the page that I just showed you. And you can see, let me go back. It says there are 54 collections with all these records and their directories and guides and references. But if you look down there, the directories, there's only 361. Okay, but 361 directories is pretty good. But I want you to take a look at the second thing. Let me go back. Okay. So we'll come back to MyHeritage. My slides are out of order. What I wanted to tell you is, even though there are a lot of directories, the large collection is the US City Directories. And the other city directories are just small collections. And maybe you'll have a city in there that they have microfilmed or they have scanned separate from that large collection of microfilms. But start there and then look for these other collections that they are adding. And MyHeritage advertises that they are going to continue on. Okay, so this was that website, the uscitydirectories.com. And this is what they have done. Is they have gone through all of these repositories and asked them what city directories they have. And they don't have the Boston Library, which has a large collection, or the New York State Library in there. But they've got the Library of Congress, and they have the Allen County Public Library, and they have a lot of genealogical societies. So this is a pretty good collection. Okay, and this is where I kind of got stuck when I went in here. The upper portion of this site just wasn't working. So what I had to do is I had to just scroll down, and then there is a map. And then you're able to access the site's things by clicking on a state that you're in. And so I clicked on California, then it took me to that website. I clicked on the city of Stockton, and then this is what it's going to show you for Stockton. So it says who has this information. So here, look, it says Boston Public Library. That wasn't in the repositories. But anyway, so if you don't find that year or some of these years, that may be who you want to contact or have them send you a page, okay? The Library of Congress, and it goes down every single year and shows who has them. All right, we get down to the very bottom and notice that it says Monterey Family History Center in Seaside, California has the 1975, 1981, 1985. Those may be a part of Family Search's collection, but they may not, and you may need to contact and find out where that is, okay? I wanted to show you over on the side, there is a little button that they have, and they say, oh, if you don't have access to those images, then we'll look it up. And it's a company, a wonderful research company. And they'll charge you $15 to go ahead and look up a person's name and the references to it and send you a little report and an image and there. But I wanted to also mention Family Search has a free lookup service for items that are not online at family history centers. And so if you go to, in fact, I just Google Family Search lookup, free lookups, and it'll send you to this website, and you click on it, you fill out a form. Within the longest it's ever taken them for me is probably 2 weeks. And they sent me a page from a book that they have, but they couldn't put the digital copy online. And so that's just a little piece of information for you. Local public and university libraries generally have directories for their region. And the Library of Congress, of course, has the largest collection of city and county directories. And this is, for example, the California State Library, but be careful because all of these that I look for in there are also at the BYU Family History and Family Search. This is the Library of Congress collection, and you can go in there. Some of them are digitized, some of them are not. You can write the librarians at the Library of Congress, and if you have a name you're looking for, you can ask them to send you that information. And so just know that sometimes it helps to be able to look for additional. You'll notice this one says California, San Jose, 1950. Remember, those microfilmed were only till 1940 at Family Search. So it might be worthwhile for you to check out the Library of Congress and get additional records. Okay, now we're back at MyHeritage. I apologize for having this slide at the wrong place. So they have the 51 collections, but only 36. And then even though there's 56 million, there's 51 in the one collection of city directories, okay? So there's 1 million in the 360 other collections, but we will start with this one collection. It has a refiner down here. It says refine to just the US and the city directories, and we could refine to California, but this is what I found. Let me show you. I clicked on California, and it went to these other, just listed by city, the directories that they have. And they are not it's 1860. They're a large variety of directories. So this is really, I think, the collection that they have scanned themselves. When I looked for Stockton, it wasn't in the list. And so therefore I had to go back. So this is my tip to search this collection. They have up here Stockton, California, and it didn't return any results. I did a Control F and typed in Stockton, but then I also put in, there are 61 directories they named, and I put 100, and then I looked for Stockton, and it turned no results. So there was no Stockton directories. So then I needed to know that I needed to go back to just search that US collection. So you're going to lose that US city directories with those 51 million. So that's just something you should be aware of. Okay, so when we clicked on the US city directories, they have a little thing for you to read. And they say, we have this huge compilation for 1860. They have some earlier ones, but this is what this collection is. And then they go on to say that we've taken the OCR and we have taken the pieces out of the OCR and put it together. And what we've done is they have created families. And then they have a little bit about why you use city directories. Is there was a 20-year period between the 1880 census and the 1900 census that's really the challenge for family historians, because of course that 1890 census was burned. Okay. And then the first directories were 1785. So that's just a little information they had over there. But now we're going to search for names. Okay, so I start typing in. And then this is one of the neat things they have is they say, do you want spelling variations for this name? And as I told you, some directories standardize names. And so this one will say, yeah, I want this smart computer, this AI to work for me. And then the second one I really liked, it says match initials. And so you probably all have had ancestors that flip between their middle name and their first name and used initials. And so it will search directories if that year they just decide to do the initial thing. Okay, so we've typed in her name, we've typed in the place, Stockton, and this is what comes up. It says there was a Marion Miller and a Marion E. Miller. And Marion E. Miller is a different person. Okay, she's a salesman, and it was a man and had a wife, Olive. But then you notice up here it says we have found her in 1832 to 1937 at that one address. And so even though Marion moved to another locality within the same county, they haven't put that, the IE hasn't caught that Joseph Miller is in another place. Is all that they have caught is this one address. But that is kind of cool. So we'll click on that. See down here, they have said these are the records. We've got all of these directories. You can take and click through all of those directories. And if you scroll down a little bit, then is what you'll see. And we'll come back to this page to see who else is at this address. But if you scroll down, then they've highlighted brightly in purple, and you can scroll in and you can see. And so this is the year he was a fireman. And then you could go on to the next one and see that he changed occupation and became a carpenter, a woodworker. Okay, on this page, when you're here, if you scroll down, it will still list all of those years, but this does not have a link to it. So is what you've got to do is go back to that original page, okay, that I showed you, and then click through those to find who he is. Okay, so this is what happens. You'll click on the next one, and there it is, the next page that's going to come up. Remember how it says, see who else lived at this address. They have also used IE to look through the directories and see all of the other people that live there. And they are organized by year. So you can see, oh, Joseph de Soto was the first resident that they have in a directory at that address. And then we keep going down and we find out there the person who lived at that address before Marion Miller was Pern Schaffner. And the person who lived at that address after her was Lena Sarsian. So why they are giving you this is so that you can see if perhaps there was a marriage, or perhaps this is the father and he died and he left the home to Marion, or, there's a lot of different scenarios, but that's kind of a nice little piece of information to know who lived there before, who lived there after, was there a name change? And if you click on this, you'll be able to look to those pieces of in the directory and be able to see it. Okay, one more thing. This is a little tip for you. Go ahead and highlight the address and then go into the Google Maps, okay? And you're going to click on the little person, and then you can go in and you can look at the house. And you can even take a look at the street that they lived on. Is this an apartment? Is this a residence? What is this? Where are they living? You can go up and down the street and see, they live across the street from a school or whatever. Again, these are little pieces of handles that can show you if they are moving on up or if they aren't moving on up. And this gives you a picture and shows you they had a large lot that had a street behind, alley behind, a street and before. I know one time we were looking at this and we found out that the person was standing on the front door as Google Maps was taking pictures, and we had a picture of the person standing in front of their house. These are just a couple of quick little scenarios. This is another researcher, but as I'm reading through, I repeatedly see how people have used city directories. And so this was a recent one that was done for Memorial Day at American Ancestors. And so he had this teenage Civil War veteran that had joined the Navy. And then after the war was over, then he wanted to find out what happened to him. Okay, and what happened to this uncle of his. And so he starts to, as he goes through it, he says that the Newport City directories show that George and Amelia lived at separate addresses and that he was working as a house painter. And then he shows that he moved to Bristol, Rhode Island. And then he says, I suspected he lived in a soldier's home. So he went and checked, and sure enough, he was in a soldier's home, and that's where he died. And a lot more to that story. It was just really a fun story to read. But for him, that city directory helped him to see the separation from this wife that later filed for a pension from him, and was trying hard to prove that even though they had just separated and weren't divorced, that she deserved his pension. So sometimes you don't realize how long these veterans lived and what their lives, that the PTSD that they suffered was something, valuable. The second person I want to talk to you about is the Overstreet family. This is a friend came to me, and this is something that you'll find these little in these directories. This is a picture of the St. Joseph High School. And this is her husband's father went to this school. And so you have just these amazing, tender little mercies that are in city directories. You won't find this if you're just looking at the name, but as you start scanning through, you'll find these type of things along with the pictures of the churches. You'll find pictures of cemeteries. You'll find pictures of individuals. You'll find pictures of businesses in their advertisements, or pictures of individuals with their business in a business advertisement. And so this was kind of fun. Her problem was that the father, Robert Lee Overstreet, who this is his picture, and his wife, when he died, their daughter said that his father was Thomas Robert Overstreet and his wife was Judy Ann Perry. But she's upset because Family Search Family Tree says his father's name is George Benjamin Nelson, married to Judith Perrier, which Perry and Perrier could be the same person. And so there's a lot of research that I could tell you about that went into resolving this problem, but the city directories were kind of the core that helped resolve this. It showed he was a barber. And so then as I'm researching the family, barbers and that simple occupation helped to tie the family together to the uncles, and that it was a skill. As he moved to a new city, it helped to tie in things like that. So this is just a summary quickly at the end of what I found. In 1893, so remember, she died before the 1900 census, and that was one of the problems. He is dead. And so it has Judy, the widow of George Ann, living at 4111 Franklin. So then the next year we have Judy, the widow of G. Ann, living at Ellsworth. And then it has Lee R. who is a barber, and this is the place that he's a barber, living at her same address. And then the next year, then up pops the Robert, and he's a barber. His sister is a teacher, and then John and Floyd. And then as we followed these through newspaper clippings and that, and found out the story of, what happens when a man dies, and the source of income goes that the family is fragmented, and people leave to go and serve in the war and things like that. Anyway, it put together the wife and the children and that father's names. And it was just that one piece of evidence that was able to help us to move from a grandchild's memory that she had put in an obituary that was leading us astray. the obituary also gave us, I told you, the school, and it gave us the church that he went to. And his obituary, he said, I had this epiphany and was turned to God. And so then we were able to contact the church. And so it was just a special thing.